Welcome back to Mac Stories Unwind. Today's show is brought to you by Collide. I'm John Voorhees, and with me, of course, is Federico. Hey, Federico.
Hey, John. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. And we have a guest with us, too. We have Jonathan Reed. How are you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing great. Great to be here. How are you doing, guys?
Very, very good. We've got Jonathan on because today is a special day. Today is the start of the Federico Film Fest, which is...
That's an excellent name.
Triple
Please
F.
explain what the triple F, what is the Federico Film Fest?
Okay, so, last week you and I talked about how you announced how you wanted to become a person who watches movies, basically.
And that is pretty much what I did. Yes,
that's what you did. You made a pronouncement, and you issued it to the entire internet. And in the following week, we've gotten all sorts of recommendations for you on the Club Mac Stories Discord and Mastodon and on Threads and really just about everywhere. And so you've got a very, very long list of movies that you are considering to watch. And I thought, you know what, why not make this a thing? It's not going to be every week, but we're going to periodically going forward have special episodes, which are Federico's Film Fest, because everybody likes alliteration. And,
True.
this is all about you, Federico. I mean, this is your moment. But we're gonna have some comments too. This is just not just about Federico and the movie he watched. This is about me and about Jonathan too, because we watched Memento 2, which is the first movie we're going to talk about today. So stay tuned in the future for more of these. But we're going to be talking about Memento today, and at the end of the episode, I think we'll talk a little bit about what might be next on deck.
Yeah. So we of course involve Jonathan because he's I think quite the knowledgeable person about movies, certainly more than me. And Jonathan does such a great job on the club Discord and putting together all these links about media and just we figured what better way to have a fest. I mean, if this is a film fest, can you do a film fest with just two people?
You can't have a party with just two people, Federico. You got to have at least a third.
Yeah, if it's two people, it's a date.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
film date. This is Federico's Film Fest, so it's the three of us. All right. So Memento. Okay, so this is the movie we watched. It's a movie by Christopher Nolan, a director that I would say a director that I like a lot. Inception is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I also see the thing is I have watched some movies in my life. It's not like I have literally watched 0 movies in 35 years. I have watched some movies, and by Christopher Nolan, I believe is also The Prestige. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and that is also a movie that I really, really like. But Memento, like my first impressions, and then we can talk about the story, we can talk about our thoughts. It's the kind of movie that I really liked, even though as soon as he wrapped up, I felt like my brain was fried and I had no idea what I just watched. Like I had the feeling that I liked what I'd seen, but I was thinking about it and I was like, what did I just see? Like it left me with that feeling of like I need to understand the past 2 hours of this movie because I need to think about it. And the more I thought about it this week, the more I think I appreciated the structure of the movie.
Yeah, no, I had a similar reaction. I think I watched it, I think last Friday evening, and it was a great movie. I was sitting with Jennifer and she was reading a book. She wasn't really interested in watching the movie. And you can imagine watching this movie, but just looking up every now and then and wondering what's going on. That was kind of her reaction, because it's the kind of movie you got to pay attention to because it's already very confusing in the way they tell the story. And I think the reason I never watched this movie originally when it came out is that the name didn't really grab me or something. There's something about the way this movie was marketed that didn't really grab me when it came out, whether it's the name, which doesn't really suggest much of anything to me, or just the marketing around it. But for whatever reason, I missed it at the time, but I'm glad I have seen it now. And I guess we should say, before we talk any further about the story, is that we are going to be spoiling this movie if you have not already seen it. I think it's safe to say we've really got to really understand this movie. You have to really explain how it's told in a lot of ways. And that, I think, spoils one major aspect of the movie.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about the movie. And Jonathan, from context, you've seen this movie again, but you had previously watched it.
This
right?
no, this is my favorite movie of all time. This is I have watched this.
Okay.
Yeah, I have watched this film probably, I don't know, I'd like to say at least 20 times, probably.
Oh wow!
I watch it
okay.
at least once a year, and sometimes I'll maybe watch it again. If there's a Christopher Nolan film coming out, I'll normally rewatch it, and with another one or two of his films, because he's one of my favorite directors. So I will watch a couple of his films just to sort of, remind me of his style and just going into the new film, so I can sort of have something in comparison. And so no, I've watched this many times. When I watched it when it came out, didn't know what it was going to be about, didn't know anything about it. Watched it and I actually watched it with a double bill with his very, very first film, which is a 1 hour black and white film he did at college. And they're both very kind of similar in terms of like chopped up timelines and so forth. But I love this film, and I watched it again the other night, and it still completely holds my attention the entire way through. I wasn't looking down at my phone or anything. And even though I know the entire film inside and out, I still am totally enwrapped by this film, and there's always little bits that I spot each time. So yeah, it is my favorite film. And actually, a point to your what you're saying about the title, John, is that this is based on a short story by Christopher's brother, Jonathan, who subsequently created Westworld, and is doing the new Fallout TV series that's coming next month. And the short story was called Memento Mori, which means remember.
Yeah, which is it's a Latin express. It's a famous Latin expression. It means remember that you're gonna die.
Yes, exactly.
Which and obviously in Italian, the word memento means a lot. Like I could instantly tell that it was gonna be like about remembering, or like remembering things or memories, because it comes from Latin, and it's very similar to the Italian language. So, but I understand why in English, like it's not maybe the most captivating title, I guess. So the story, I'm gonna try my best. So the main protagonist is this Leonard Shelby. And Leonard Shelby suffers from effectively short-term memory loss. What's it called? Like anterograde amnesia or something. The idea being that he can't make new memories. He suffered a traumatic event. He witnessed the murder of his wife, and he was assaulted by one of the men that in the story killed his wife, and he hit his head. And from that moment on, he started suffering from this particular form of amnesia, or like short-term memory loss, in that his mind, for the short-term stuff, it's like a temporary buffer, in that after a few minutes, he forgets what he forgets everything. And so he remembers vividly any sort of thing and information about his life before the accident. He remembers how to function as a human being in society. He remembers his name, he remembers his previous life, but from that moment on, any new memory he cannot form. He keeps forgetting after every few minutes. And we learned that in this movie, he's out to seek revenge against the man who killed his wife, and to piece together all the clues leading to the man he wants to kill to enact revenge. He tries to remember details by writing them down on little pieces of paper, by taking photographs with a Polaroid camera, and sort of annotating details behind the picture. And also, his entire body is tattooed with permanent clues and mess and notes that tell him what happened. And so, very quickly, and this is how, like, the movie has a sort of like, there were moments of the movie where it kind of reminded me of like Groundhog Day, for example, where he keeps waking up, keeps following the same routine, and he talks about how the fact that routine is key to him functioning with his condition. Like he wakes up, he looks at himself in the mirror, he sees the tattoos, he remembers, oh, my wife was killed. I need to find this John G who killed my wife, and I need to kill him. And he finds all these clues on his body with tattoos, but also in this collection of pictures that he has.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the Groundhog Day comparison as well, because there's Stephen Tobolowsky, who plays Sammy Jankis, who in the flashbacks is one of the main characters in Groundhog Day, if you remember.
Really?
Yeah, he's the one.
Wow,
he's
okay.
the annoying person who he keeps bumping into on the street every day in Groundhog Day. If you go back, trust me, it's him. So yeah, that's a funny little coincidence there. But I think it's interesting the film as well. It's told backwards as well, and that's the big. I guess that's the big hook of the film.
Yeah, so the hook of the film is that so I watched a video that, John, we can maybe put in the show notes, of Christopher Nolan describing the structure of Memento, and he describes it as like a hairpin. So he draws on this whiteboard in this video that I watched. He draws the shape of a hairpin with essentially there are two main timelines. Like there's the parts of the film that are shot in black and white, and there are the parts in color. And the key thing is that these two macro sequences, follow a different order. The black and white sequences are presented as flashbacks, but they lead toward the end of the story, whereas the color sequences, they follow the end of the story. But all these timelines have been chopped up in parts, in sections, and the story jumps back and forth essentially between the before the end and after the end. And it's only at the physical end of the movie, of the film, that you can see that you can make sense of the order of events. And I think that like the structure of Memento was the thing that really struck me, because I have never seen a movie told this way, with the timeline being chopped in two halves and then chopped again in more sections, with the movie jumping back and forth between the sections of these two timelines. I think it's like such a fascinating exercise in cinematography and in storytelling. And it's the reason why I had to keep thinking and reading more about the movie, because I don't want to say that it made me feel stupid, but it made me feel like, okay, I think I follow the main events, but I need to understand properly. Like, it's the kind of movie that I think pushes you the first time you see it to do more research about it.
Right. And I think the idea here is really to put you off kilter. I think that's the whole idea, because you're being put in a way in Leonard's shoes, which is you're constantly confused, right? It kind of mirrors his mental state, I think.
Yeah, because you can't, everything that happens narratively before the scene that you're watching, you haven't seen yet. So you don't know what happened before, which is exactly the same as Leonard, because he can't remember what happened before. So you're very much in his exact situation where you don't know what happened before. So you're learning stuff as you go along, which is, it's something that I think that could maybe be misinterpreted as a bit of a gimmick, but I think it actually works perfectly in this film, really, and it sort of really puts you in his shoes, like you say, John. So that's one thing I really love about it.
This episode of Mac Stories Unwind is brought to you by Collide. What do you call an endpoint security product that works perfectly but makes users miserable? It's a failure. The old approach to endpoint security is to lock down employee devices and roll out changes through forced restarts, but it just doesn't work. IT is miserable because they've got a mountain of support tickets. Employees start using their personal devices just to get their work done, and executives opt out the first time it makes them late for a meeting. You can't have a successful security implementation unless you work with end users. That's where Collide comes in. Their user-first device trust solution notifies users as soon as it detects an issue on their device and teaches them how to solve the problem without needing help from IT. That way, untrusted devices are blocked from authenticating, but users don't stay blocked. Collide is designed for companies with Okta, and it works with macOS, Windows, Linux, and mobile devices. So, if you have Okta and you're looking for a device trust solution that respects your team, visit collide.com/MacStoriesUnwind to watch a demo and see how it works. That's KOLIDE.com/MacStoriesUnwind. Our thanks to Clyde for their support of the show.
There are, of course, other characters in the movie, and I wanted to talk about the role of Teddy and Natalie. Natalie, played by Carrie Ann Moss, and Teddy, I don't remember the name of the actor who
Joe
plays Teddy.
Pantoliano is Teddy.
Thank you. So the idea being that Leonard is out to seek revenge against this John G, this man who he believes he was able to identify through some kind of police report that he put together and researched over the years. And he believes he's now found the location of this John G. And there's this character, Teddy, who, like, it took me a while to understand what the role of Teddy was, and I think that's by design in the movie. It's not clear the first time you see Teddy. Like, is he a friend of Leonard? Is he some kind of police informant, or is he a cop? And by the end of the movie, it is revealed that he's a cop, or at least a cop undercover of some kind, and is helping Leonard find John G. And then there's Natalie, this woman who also lost her husband, who's trying to escape this Dodd guy who wants to have some money back from her because Jimmy, her husband, owed Dodd money. But at the same time, Natalie tells Leonard that she's convinced that Jimmy died because something was going on with this Teddy character. And so it becomes clear after a while, it became clear to me that all these characters were using Leonard and were taking advantage of his condition and were manipulating him. And I think from my perspective, that was especially clear with Natalie, how she was manipulating Leonard and taking advantage of the fact that he wouldn't remember details from a few minutes before. So the conclusion of the story, I think, like where the movie makes sense, is that essentially Teddy tells Leonard that he used to be the cop assigned to the murder case of his wife. And they actually found the real John G like a year before or years before. And he killed him, but he can't remember that. And ever since, Teddy has been taking advantage of Leonard's condition to kill more people and like to make him believe that this other person was another John G. And so they have been going from John G to John G, just killing people to serve Teddy's interests. And so that's the first person that was manipulating Leonard. But then also Natalie, when she realizes that Jimmy was killed by Leonard, and Leonard took his car, took his clothes, and showed up at this bar wearing Jimmy's clothes and driving Jimmy's car, she realizes that he was involved with the murder of his husband, who was a drug dealer, and she starts manipulating Leonard to kill Teddy. And so she convinces Leonard that Teddy is actually John G. And so the movie starts with Leonard killing Teddy, but the story essentially ends with Leonard realizing that he wants to kill Teddy. It's kind of confusing to explain.
Yeah.
Right.
But to me, it was such a great example of using timelines and split timelines to tell different perspectives and to show how different people were manipulating Leonard, who was at the center of it all and can't remember anything.
and it plays with memory as well, I think, which is a really interesting. I think there's something you mentioned you were interested in the last Unwind.
Yeah.
But the way it plays with it, I mean, even literally everyone's taking, like you say, everyone's taking advantage of him. Even Bert, the guy who runs the motel, he's
Yes.
charging him for 2
Right.
rooms, and he's like generally quite a nice guy, but he's like, well, I told my boss about your condition, and he said try and sell him a second room. But the idea of this like memory and how you remember things, I think there's I will put a link in the show notes to this 4-part article that this person has wrote, which is very interesting, talks about the different parts of the film. But the idea of memory and how it can change over time and how things are different. And I remember Christopher Nolan talking in an interview saying that he remembers things in reverse. So he remembers like mirrored. So he remembers right is left and left is right. And everyone has this different way of remembering things. And even at the end, when he says, "Oh, your wife had diabetes," he's like, "Well, no, she didn't. I would have remembered that." But then he doubts it, and it's this idea of memory that and how much you can rely on it. Which, I mean, I generally find that fascinating. Full stop in any media, the sort of the unreliable narrator, and in this film, this is just taken to the ultimate level, really, where you can't even trust him, and he can't trust himself. And then even Teddy at the end reveals all the details, but because of the way that Joe Pantoliano plays him so sort of dodgily, it's like, can you even trust him, really? And it's like,
Exactly.
well, and I think that and Chris Nolan talked about that, how that was a kind of an unexpected bonus from casting Joe Pantoliano, because he has such a style which is so unreliable that you just, even though he seems like a decent enough guy, quite a bit dodgy, you can't really trust anything that's saying, even though I still probably believe what he says at the end. I don't think I can say 100% that I can. So that's what I love
And it
that.
kind of, like, the fact that basically at the end of the movie you sort of need to you need to choose to believe what you want to believe,
Yeah.
right? In a way, it kind of reminds me of the end of Inception, like another Nolan movie.
Right.
But like at the end of Inception, you know how they have that spinning object that I don't recall, Cobb, I think is the character that DiCaprio plays. Cobb has this sort of item that it's like what's it called?
A spinning top.
Spinning top. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he uses that to keep himself grounded in reality.
Right.
And if the thing keeps spinning, it means he's still in the world of the dreams. And if it falls on the table, it means he's back in reality. But at the end of the Inception, the final shot is the thing just spinning and spinning and spinning, and then you can see it wobbling, but then the movie cuts to black. And so you need to choose to believe, like, do I think that the end of Inception is the thing actually falling, and so Cobb is back in reality, or is he still in the world of the dream?
Right.
And in a way, this reminds me of, like, well, Teddy tells this story at the end of the movie, but can you really believe him? And so you need to make a decision at the end, like, what do you believe is the story? And that, I think, is such a fascinating thing to leave the viewer with.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. And also, there is, I believe, a way to watch this movie in the proper chronological order.
Yeah.
Um,
I've tried
think
doing that. It's not very good.
yeah, I can imagine, because basically, like, what you end up in there is Leonard deciding to kill Teddy after 20 minutes or something, and then the rest. Yeah, and so, like, it's kind of terrible. I imagine.
Yeah,
but I believe it was also like an Easter egg in the special edition DVD of Memento,
Right.
where you could watch the chapters in the chronological order. But yeah,
it's a strange one.
Overall, So I would say that I really like this movie, and, like, sometimes I think about it and I'm confused, and then I go read about it and I'm fascinated by the storytelling technique. So
that's why you watch it 20 times, like me. It's fascinating. Yeah, I think one thing I want to ask though is, I always it's such a joy when someone watch this film and enjoys it. I really, really love hearing about it. But I always ask them as well about their memories. Like, I'm interested to know what both of your memory is like. How do you remember things? Do you think you got a good memory, or is it do you think you misremember things? I always find that like a really interesting question after people have watched this film, because I think you think about the way you remember things, and people, the way he remembers his wife is very specific, and it's probably different from the way that I remember moments with my wife, but it's different. I think everyone has their own way. And I wondered what you guys have with your memories. How do you find them?
I don't
That's a
know. I
good
mean, I think
question.
I have a pretty good memory, and I think though maybe it's the older memories are the more vivid memories, maybe because you've essentially added to them mentally over the years in ways that maybe aren't reliable, but are make them, more engaging in some way. My short-term memory is pretty good, although sometimes if you ask me what I wrote about 3 weeks ago, I won't remember. I mean, it's like, I don't know. Certain things stick, certain things don't, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way, and I think I think maybe mine is less of a visual memory. Like I kind of struggle to remember faces sometimes,
Hmm.
but I think I have a pretty good like sort of like a knowledge memory, like about facts and information and like details. Sometimes I forget. Like for example, to give you just one silly example, last night I was cooking dinner, and there was a particular way that I needed to cook these mushrooms, and as I was preparing them, Sylvia told me, "Do you remember we cooked them with this new technique for the first time like 3 weeks ago?" And I had totally removed. Like once she told me, I remember. Oh yeah, like that's something that we've done. So like I think it's. I think I have. So I think I have better work memory than like everyday
That's
real
probably true for
life.
me too.
Yeah.
You know what? I remember, for example, like I can tell you, like I have a pretty good memory. For example, like all the features of a specific version of iOS.
You're right.
But like, if you ask me, hey, what? I mean, and I think it's common for a lot of people, right, to forget this sort of like simple details of everyday life, and I also think I'm better with data than pictures, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's funny. I'm good with my work memory, but in terms of outside of that, I think I'm probably the opposite a bit of you. I'm really good with faces, but I'm terrible with
Mm.
names. And actually, me and my wife have an agreement that if we meet someone in the street that seems to know me, that maybe I've worked with before, or I know and she's never met before, that we have an agreement that if I haven't introduced them and said their name after about 20 seconds or so, that she has to introduce herself so that they will say their name, because I've generally forgotten it.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah.
it's a good approach.
Yeah,
That is good.
All right.
yeah, so
Well, so that was Memento. Great movie. So, in terms of what's coming next for the Federico Film Fest, both you, Jonathan, and friend of the show, friend of ours, Brandon Bigley, go listen to his podcast, Into the Aether. Great video game show. You both send me movie watch lists on Letterboxd. So you both were kind enough to do the work for me, and I really, really appreciate it. So thank you, Jonathan.
no worries.
You both, without talking to each other, I assume, but
Yeah.
in both of your lists, there was this movie that I think I heard before back in the days of Twitter or something, Snowpiercer, and I think I want to watch that next.
It was a TV series too, but not a very great one. I think it's much better as a movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, if it's in your list, it's in Brandon's list. I think I'm gonna give it a try. Snowpiercer for
All
the
right.
next movie that I'm gonna watch.
Excellent
Very
choice.
good. All right, Federico.
Yeah, what's on deck for the next episode of Unwind, John?
Well, for either for the next episode or just in the future in general, we'd like to leave everybody with some extra picks, just stuff that we're thinking about watching or playing or whatever over the next several weeks. So I thought I would ask each of you, what's on deck for you, Jonathan?
So I've got a TV series which I've been meaning to try out for a while, and I've got a little gap. I think I've finished a couple of shows that I'm going to try and pick up this series called Mr. In Between, it was an FX series. I think it ran for about 3 seasons, and I think a few people have mentioned it to me, but most recently Simon on the Club Max Stories Discord mentioned it and said it was great. And it's been on my list for a while. And so I'm going to try and watch that show. I'm going to actually so I don't really know much about it, but I'm going to read the quick summary that's in sequel, actually, which it goes like this. Ray Shoesmith is a father, ex-husband, boyfriend, and best friend. Tough roles to juggle in the modern age, even harder when you're a criminal for hire. So intriguing, looks quite good, and it's highly recommended. So that's on deck for me at the minute.
All right. How about you, Federico?
So I think, I mean, besides Snowpiercer, I wanted to tell you, John, that my next surprise is coming soon. And
Oh,
you have no idea what I've done, but it's going to be about video games. And I'm going to play Dragon's Dogma 2. I think that's what's on deck for me. But playing Dragon's Dogma 2 is part of a bigger surprise that I will reveal at some point, either next week or maybe the week after next. But yeah, I took a break from surprises, but now I'm back with a bit of a surprise for you. And as part of that, I think I'll probably play Dragon's Dogma 2.
I have been reading a little bit about that game, and it sounds really good. I was intrigued by it. I might actually give it a try myself, but I've got some other games kind of in my queue right now. But I'm not gonna. My on deck pick for this week is going to be Steve, which is a Steve Martin documentary that just came out on Apple TV Plus. Now, Steve Martin, people may know him from like Only Murders in the Building, and other things that are more recent, but he's been around and been a comedian since the 70s and has had a really long and interesting career. And I think this is a 2-part documentary, I believe. And I think it sounds like it would be a very interesting way to kind of look back on what has been a very broad ranging career, from everything from stand-up comedy to Saturday Night Live and television and movies. So I'm looking forward to checking that one out.
Yeah, I managed to get an early look at that and earlier in the week, and watched both those, and it's very good. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Oh, good. Well, I will put links to all this stuff in the show notes. I want to thank our sponsor for this episode again. That's Collide. You can find me and Federico over at MacStories.net. You can find Jonathan over there too, also, and on Club Mac Stories. We are on Mastodon. Just go to Viticci.MacStories.net and JohnVorhees.MacStories.net. And we're all on Threads and Instagram as well. I am at John Voorhees. Federico is at Viticci. And Jonathan, you are?
On Threads, I'm at Aylward Reed. We'll drop the link in the show notes. I think that's easier.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks for chatting about Memento today, guys. Bye-bye.
Ciao, John.
Bye.